You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 104, How Your Breakup Impacts Future Relationships. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. My beautiful brave hearts, I hope you are doing well. I'm sending all of my love, and I am so excited for today's podcast episode. So, as you know, I live and breathe thinking about all of you brave hearts all of the time. I'm so in love with you guys. So if you've been around for a while, you know that for Valentine's Day this past year in 2021, I did something called the Braveheart Festival. I planned out a day that was like a festival, and I thought about how would I want to spend my Valentine's Day, and I mapped it out completely the exact way I would want to spend it, and then I invited all of you to join me. And it was back-to-back goodness. We had other coaches, other people with talents like photography and flower lessons, cooking lessons. It was so much fun. It was literally jam-packed from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We had stuff going on all day that you could join virtually because we were still within the pandemic. I cannot wait to host in-person retreats though. So it was amazing. And from that, I just thought it was so fun. I wanted to go ahead and integrate that inside of the Get Over Your Ex in 3 Months or Less program. So I had started inviting guest speakers to come in each week to talk about topics that correlate to the material that we're learning. So in this round, we've had a wide variety of guest speakers from feminine to masculine energy. We've talked about vitality and how your physical health, like your gut health, affects the thoughts we think. We've talked about manifesting and so much more. I am completely obsessed, and I love getting to share my favorite things and I guess my favorite topics and my favorite coaches with my Bravehearts within the program. I just love it. It lights me up. And honestly, my Bravehearts, this program has just been so rewarding. I cannot explain in words how amazing it is to wake up and head over to the online portal where I talk with them inside the program. And as I'm writing this, we are actually in week 6 of the latest round, and we have a midpoint review where I have them rate on a scale how over their ex they are and why. They talk about what's gone well in the first 6 months, the first 6 weeks, and what hasn't gone well. And then we determine what they're going to be doing differently in the rest of the program. And what they're sharing within that is killing me. Like, it's just crazy to me how much we can accomplish as humans within such a short time frame. Some of the stuff they've talked about is being comfortable being uncomfortable. They know how to question their beliefs and their thoughts. They know how to grieve and let go of dirty pain. They're being kind to themselves and they're being compassionate to themselves. They've gotten rid of the negative self-talk, right? Creating lives that are beautiful and joy-filled on their own, allowing urges to reach out to their exes, feeling less lonely, opening their eyes to new possibilities of what their future could be like. And obviously the clear one, right? They've reduced their desire for their ex through becoming the person who's over their ex and in love with themselves and the life that they've created. It just gives me chills. And they track this all on a scale from 0 to 10. And some of them are completely over their ex already, or at like a very low desire. I don't know how to put this if I don't have a chart. They rate it from a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being totally over their ex, 10 being not even close to being over their ex. And so we've got people all over that scale, but a lot of them are underneath the 5 mark, which is just amazing halfway through the program, and they're already there. Now, I actually describe this exercise on Instagram. So if you want to do this exercise for yourself at home, I highly recommend. And you can find that on my Instagram at Breakup Coach Dorothy. If you go to the IGTV, I have posted the live that I did explaining that exercise so that you can do that at home. So gives me chills. I would love for you to do that. I also have midpoint one-on-one check-ins with each of them this week, and those make my heart just so full. I love being able to connect with them in that deeper way with each of them. Okay, sorry for the tangent. It's just this program is literally what I spend the majority of my time doing and thinking about, and it means the world to me, and I get very inspired and I fall madly in love with these humans doing this work. Just so proud of them. So without further ado, I am excited to bring to you today a very special guest, Katrin, who is the coach of Grumpy Girlfriends. And I love the work she's doing in this world because I for sure used to be a very grumpy girlfriend. And one of the most common things I hear from my brave hearts is they wish they would have known this information before their breakup. They wish they knew that thoughts created feelings before their relationship actually ended. And this is the beauty of Katrin's work, is she is helping humans while already inside the relationship. And that is the beauty of this work. You can grow your relationship with yourself and learn to manage your mind while inside of a relationship or while not in a relationship. It doesn't matter. Growth lives in both places. Maybe your growth is being in the relationship and maybe your growth is not being in the relationship, and you know this best for you. So we're going to talk about all kinds of goodness. So let's just go ahead and dive in. Welcome. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Katrin. Hello, Bravehearts. I am so excited for you guys today. I have an amazing special guest that I personally am just pumped to have on the podcast and to have a conversation with. I love her. I've been following her on Instagram for some time now. She is also a certified life coach through the Life Coach School, and she has a podcast with a very, very special name, the Grumpy Girlfriend Podcast, which I'm obsessed with. And I'm very excited to have her here with us today. So her name is Katrin. Obsessed. You live in Sweden, right?
That is correct. Yes.
Yes.
I'm
Amazing.
so excited to be here.
Yay. Okay. So why don't you just give all of the Bravehearts the lowdown? Like, tell us about you. There's so many questions that I have. So why don't you just tell us a short snippet about yourself? And then I'm going to just dive into I want to know what you do. I want to know how you found this work, all of the things.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm a certified life coach since not too long ago, but it's been a very exciting and intense journey since then. But my journey actually started way, way earlier. I'm in a relationship with my boyfriend, and we've been together for about 6.5 years. And we met when I was, I think, 20 or 21. And it was my first serious relationship. And he's 5 years older than me, and he's had a lot of experience from before. So I think immediately he was very confident and calm and relaxed about everything. But I basically went through my growing up, becoming an adult, figuring everything out, experiencing jealousy and insecurity and fear and all of that for the first time in this relationship. And I had no way of navigating all of this. Like maybe the experiences that quote unquote normal people that have relationships in their teens and stuff like that, they do a lot of this kind of teen-ish behavior at that point. But I had to go through it as an adult because that's when my first relationship happened. And well, at that point, my brain was able to actually judge myself for acting that way and thinking I should know better, I should do better. So this basically goes into how I found this work and how I decided to become the Grumpy Girlfriend coach, because I was the queen of grumpy girlfriends. I was feeling insecure, jealous, frustrated, annoyed, entitled, resentful, like all of those kind of nasty, not very loving feelings in my relationship. And the whole time I knew my boyfriend isn't the problem. He's amazing. He's secure. He's calm. He's there's nothing wrong with him. Yet I was feeling awful all of the time. So I embarked on this journey to figure out what's wrong with me, which is a great journey to be on because the answer you get at the end of the journey is what's actually wrong with you. So it's not really a great question to ask. But I went to therapy multiple times. I went off and on all kinds of birth control. I had my blood drawn. I checked my thyroid. I did neuropsychiatric evaluations. I tried to change my boyfriend. I tried to change myself. Like I did all the things, but nothing really seemed to work. But then one rainy evening in November, I found Brooke Castillo in the life coach school, and the rest is history, basically.
Oh my God. I mean, how similar do our journeys seem from like
Yeah.
opposite polar ends, right? Like you found it before the relationship ended. I found it after the relationship ended. Um, and it's so similar where you're like, I tried all the things. And it's like, yeah, I tried all the things to get over my ex, which is just so fascinating and so fun. I love
Mm.
that.
Yeah, because I think like from desperation is usually where we make the biggest transformations. And I think both of us are now dedicating our lives to making sure that people don't have to get to desperation before they find the solution, because it's not very fun to be on rock bottom and have to crawl your way the whole to
Right?
whole way back up, basically.
Yes, not fun, not fun. Okay, so I know that even for myself, I was going to say that I know that my Bravehearts wish they would have found like thought work and everything that I teach before the breakup happened, because a lot
Mm.
of times maybe they were the grumpy girlfriend. And I know for myself personally, I remember when I did find Brooke Castillo, the life coach school, and thoughts creating feelings and all the things that we teach. I remember being like, wow, how different would my relationship had, like it would have been so different if I would have known all this stuff while I was in the relationship. And I do a lot of coaching with my clients with my brave hearts here around, of course you weren't supposed to have that information then, you have it now exactly when you were supposed to, all of that. But what do you have to say about that when it comes to if someone were to come and say, hey, I'm going through a breakup and I really wish I would have had this information then versus now, how do you address that? Just because I know that I address it one way, but I'm sure it'd be helpful to hear it from a different perspective.
Yeah, and I just think the best thing I can let everyone know is that you're never spared from what if thoughts, because just because your relationship ended and you're thinking back what would have happened, or I wish I would have known this sooner so that something could have been different. I have similar thoughts and my relationship is still intact. I'm still with my partner. But I mean, I treated him like crap for many years. Of course, I have thoughts wishing that I would have learned this sooner to spare him and to spare myself, and like for us not to have to go through this stuff. But in the end, as you said, like arguing with the past is never useful. And even though I could, from time and time again, like sometimes I have these thoughts like, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done those things. I wish I would have learned this stuff before I started a beef with my boyfriend's friend that basically isolated us from their entire friend group. And like all of these things that came from this insecurity and this frustration and jealousy and all of these things that were coming from my unmanaged mind. But then again, it's like, yeah, so how does that serve me right now? How does that help me to think about that way? And I think this, and I know you teach this a lot as well, that it's happening for you this way and not to you. And it's really a good belief to practice. And I read something recently that said that it's not faith until it looks like it's not going to happen, or until the evidence against it is piling up and you choose to believe anyway. And that's kind of the same with believing that it's happening for you. You might not be out of the woods yet. You might not see yet why you should have learned it at this time, but just keep believing, and eventually you're going to realize why this is the perfect time for you to learn these things. Because now that's what I choose to think. Like I really choose to think that I did learn it at the right time, and I'm just super grateful that I have a boyfriend who chose to stick around. Like I can be grateful for that, and I'm sure everyone listening, they have something to be grateful as well.
Yes, I love that. So many pieces of that that I want to comment on. I'm glad you brought up the what if situation and how you still have what ifs, because it's not, I think a lot of people are like, I see this in breakups where they're like, well, if my ex would be mean about it, this would be easier. Or if my ex wasn't so mean about this, it would be easier. And we always think the grass is greener on the other side. And so it's almost like the Bravehearts sometimes think that if they would have had this information, then it would have been better. When in reality, we still don't even know that. We have no idea. And I talk about on the podcast accepting your reality and accepting everything for what is. And I talk about it as fighting for reality instead of against it. And it goes back to everything you were just talking about of how it's all happening for you instead of to you, which by the way,
Mm.
one of my Bravehearts got that tattooed on them. How cool is that?
I saw that. That is like a whole other level.
Lost it. I was like, this is happening. I'm going to do that. I am so excited about it.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm glad that you brought all of that up. Okay. Also, can you tell us a little bit more about? I should have asked this in the very beginning, so we're just going to backtrack a little bit. Tell us more about what you do. How do you coach grumpy girlfriends?
Yes. So I coach one-on-one. So I don't do groups or masterminds or anything like that. It's always, at this point in my business at least, I do one-on-one coaching. And in the beginning, of course, we first do an assessment. Where are we at? We talk about what's going on. What has led us to this point? Are there any, as we might get into a little bit later as well, any unhealed breakup baggage parts that we're going to have to address together? And we just talk about the struggles that they have and where they ultimately want to go. Because a lot of the time when I ask them, what do you want? How you want things to be different? And the future version of you, what is she like? It's very common that the answer is just not like this. Just like not this, not whatever I'm feeling now, not whatever I'm doing now. So we actually have to work on creating a vision for the future where they are excited about becoming that version of themselves, where they actually believe that it's possible to be that version of themselves. Because if they've never had it before, if they've never been her before, it's very hard to desire it or want it because you might not even know that it's possible. So we spend time on that to know where are we now and where are we heading. And then we create a plan to kind of get you there and work on the different aspects of a relationship. But of course, the work is done on my client's brain and not on the partner. But it's a very fascinating way of working because I get to use their partner as like a what can you call it, like an extractor of their thoughts. And like we talk about the partner, but then I point out how much it's their thinking that is actually creating their reality.
Yes, so good. I'm so excited that you're talking about that. Okay, so I want to skip forward with our conversation because of that. And I want to talk about, um, so when Bravehearts go through the Get Over Your Ex program, they are feeling feelings the whole first like 4 weeks of the program. The second week, the second 4 weeks, there's all about creating closure around their breakup and, um, ending that chapter, closing that chapter, and moving forward in the last 3 or 4 weeks is on focusing on their future, which throughout that process from like week 7 on, we're talking about actually I should back up. It's probably like weeks 5, 6, and 7 that they're really honing in on the relationship with themselves because you need that to be able to create the closure. And then in week 7 and on, we also talk about relationships with others, which I'm also super excited. So Katrin is actually coming in to the Get Over Your Ex program, and she's going to be doing a workshop and having a discussion with the Bravehearts in week 7, where we do talk about applying this work moving forward in future relationships, because that's super important, right? I want my clients to not only learn how to get over their ex, but it's important that they go out and build a life better than the one they had with their ex, which includes relationships with other humans. And
Yes.
what I have found so interesting is when Bravehearts continue to do this work, it is one thing to do thought work on your own when you're almost like sometimes isolated or physically alone and not very like not interacting with a lot of other humans. It's a whole other like ball game to bring in another human being. So it's so fascinating to me to watch my Bravehearts when they go through the program and they get over their ex, and then maybe they like do another round of the Get Over Your Ex program and they're focusing on dating or their relationship. And I also have clients that are in the program who are in new relationships but still healing breakup pain,
Mm.
which we'll talk about as well. But I want to know kind of your perspective of like, how can Bravehearts really ensure that they're utilizing this content and the materials that they're learning in their next relationship? And what might that look like? What kind of work do you do with your clients when it comes to that?
Yeah. So I have a whole like list of things I would love to tell them. Like this is
Tell me all the
it's
things.
it's really a whole other scenario. And I basically like the way I look at it is you bring in another person into your life, like you have a new partner, and it's like they are a bull in a china shop, and the china shop is your well-managed mind, and they're just like running around creating all this kind of chaos. And you're gonna have to learn to manage that. And one of the first things that you might notice when you enter a new relationship, you might have noticed it already, but been able to kind of like reconcile it and be okay with it. But other people don't know this work. Like that's the truth. Your partner, very, very, very small chance that they're going to know this work. They're not going to know that their thoughts create their feelings. They're not going to know that they need to take responsibility for how they feel. Like they don't know any of that. That's new, that they don't have to, and we can actually do the work for that don't have to in order for us to have a good relationship that where we are in charge of how we are experiencing it. So another thing that will happen when you enter a new relationship after going through this work and learning it is that you will experience probably way more setbacks when you're in a relationship with someone else, because this other person is kind of highlighting and bringing out the areas where you still have work left to do. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I don't think we have to look at these setbacks as something negative. It's more something that if we want to stretch it, we can look forward to it, but we don't have to be super excited about it if we don't want to. But I just think it's good to know that a new relationship is going to expose new areas for you to work on. And don't be afraid of being a beginner again. Like, whenever you're put into new circumstances, you're going to be a beginner when it comes to thought work for that specific circumstance. And a very common thing that my clients tell me when they come to me as a grumpy girlfriend is, I don't understand why I'm acting this way. I have never been this way before. So don't be surprised if things that were never a problem with your ex, they show up in your new relationship. You might start acting all kinds of crazy in a way that you never have before. And just have compassion for yourself when it comes to that, and know that we're going to keep like kind of exposing new areas of our lives, and new behaviors are going to come up depending on the situations that we are in. So it can be very easy to experience setbacks or start struggling after having maybe months or even years of being really successful, and think that you're doing something wrong. But I just think we can use that as evidence that it's time to level up, instead of like, oh, I'm falling behind and this is not working.
I'm so glad you said that, because 100%, it's like after you start doing this work, and especially like in the Get Over Your Ex program, they spend 3 months just mastering thought work,
Mm.
mastering it so much. And so by the end of it, they're like, I'm feeling great. It's amazing. I'm killing it. I'm crushing it. They feel amazing. And then whatever the next chapter involves for them, it might be, dating, it might be career, it might be money. I don't know. It's just different for every single person. And they get into it and they're like shocked that they have to go through the same process of feeling their feelings, creating closure, and
Yes.
focusing on their future.
Still have to feel my feelings?
Yeah,
No.
and it was so funny. I have one client that I'm thinking about specifically, and she's like amazing. And she cried her way through the first 4 weeks of the Get Over Your Ex program. And then when she went through it again to focus on money and her relationship with money, she was like completely shocked that she was crying about everything in her relationship with money. And it was like, yeah, that's it. That's like a part of the process. That's why you learn the process. And that's why the process is so important, is because you're going to apply it to so many areas of your life. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I bet a bunch of people resonate with that hardcore. That's amazing. Okay. So I also want to talk about, um, I know that you haven't personally experienced a breakup before, but can we talk a little bit about clients who have, unhealed breakup baggage that then enter into a new relationship versus those who might not have that? And what are the differences? And like, do you have any like tidbits or, tips that you could, or advice that you could provide the Bravehearts who might be going through or experiencing something like that?
So I wrote a little story that I thought we could use as a like foundation for this discussion.
I love
And
it.
it's about Sarah.
Okay.
So I'm going to read you the story and then we can dive into what's going on here.
So good.
So Sarah was in a relationship with Ben for 3 years, and Ben ended up cheating on her with his coworker 2 years into the relationship. But Sarah chose to forgive him and they tried to move forward. A year later, Ben broke up with Sarah out of the blue because he said he didn't love her anymore. She was heartbroken and confused, and she didn't understand why did he break up with her after she had done literally everything she could to make this relationship work. So Sarah promised herself to never let this happen again. She looked back at the relationship and picked out all the red flags, all the warning signs, all the situations where she should have known and where she should have been able to predict what was going to happen. So she like examined everything to make sure this is never going to happen again. So a year later, Sarah meets John and they have a great time together. But when it starts getting serious, Sarah's brain keeps reminding her of this promise that she made to herself to never be broken up with out of the blue ever again. So she promised herself to see all of the red flags and understand what was actually going on behind the scenes. Very important to be able to prevent this thing from happening. So this leads in her relationship with John. It leads her to always ask him how he's feeling about her, always cross-examining his words and his actions and what she thinks his actions mean and what she thinks he's actually thinking, not just what he says he's thinking. And she doubts everything he says and makes up all kinds of lose-lose situations where he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. And she sees all the red flags waving as soon as other women are around, and she can't really bring herself to be vulnerable and intimate with John because she's so ready constantly for him to just dump her out of the blue. So basically, what has happened here is that when the breakup with Ben happened, was like her brain got confused. She was like, I did all of this hard work to fix the relationship. How is it possible for him to not love me? Like, how is it possible for him to break up with me? It makes no sense whatsoever, because she thought that it was within her power to make him stay. And then when he left a year later, she got confused again, and she took responsibility for Ben's thoughts and feelings and lack of feelings and the action that he took when he chose to leave. So she assigned her brain with this job to find evidence of how it was her fault, because if it was her fault, then she can stop it from happening in the future, of course. And what the brain is assigned to look for, it's going to find. All of you Bravehearts know this, that like what we look for evidence for, we're going to find regardless if it's true or not. So her promise to never let this happen to her again was a promise that she could never keep, because Ben's actions and his decisions were never within her control. So she trained her brain to be super suspicious and to question everything that John does, because she wants to control his actions as well. And basically, this is a concept that comes up all the time with my clients, and that is that the brain thinks that feeling pain in preparation of pain is so much better than feeling happy and then being surprised by pain. And that is something that I think is worth questioning. Is that really, really true?
Girl, there's going to be so many people who resonate with that story right now. 100%. And I love that you're talking about that, because we're like, oh, I'm going to feel pain now to avoid pain later. I'm going to feel disappointed now to avoid feeling disappointed later, versus, like you just said, experiencing and enjoying the happiness that's happening now and not avoiding like a surprise pain later.
Yeah. And a big part of the pain later also comes from these ideas like, I should have known better, I should have left, I should have seen it coming. Like the shame and guilt that happens when we are surprised by pain, that shame and guilt is generated by us.
Mm-hmm.
So when we beat the crap out of ourselves because we didn't see it coming, well, then next time we're going to see it coming everywhere so that we don't have to get punched in the face by ourselves. Like, that's what we're trying to avoid.
Right. And then you don't get to enjoy falling in love, you guys.
Yeah.
I'm falling in love right now. So I'm like on this high of like, I love love. And I'm like, it would be such a bummer if I was sitting there looking for all the red flags. It would be such a bummer if I was sitting there being like, he might break up with me. And I genuinely am to this place now where I'm like so not concerned about someone breaking up with me, because worst case scenario, I get to fall in love again. And I love that experience. So I'm like down. But 100%. I think I have a podcast episode called I Should Have Seen It Coming. And
I think I've listened to it too.
yeah. Yeah. And it is, I mean, you talk about this too all the time. I see it on your Instagram all the time about the shoulding. What is your saying about it? It's really good. You say,
Are you shitting all over your relationship and then complaining that it stinks?
yes. So good. I love that. 100%. 100%. Because the shoulding never gets us closer to solving the problem that your brain is trying to solve, right? If you're saying I should have seen it coming, what your brain is really trying to do is make sure that you don't experience negative emotion. And that just leads you to shame. And then when you feel shameful, right, you're beating yourself up, negative self-talk, and then you're experiencing all of that negative emotion now. And it's not solving any problem. Like there's no solution. Very solution driven, like problem, solution. And it's like, you're not getting any closer to a solution that way.
Exactly.
I love it. Amazing. Okay. So is there anything else that you want to share with the Bravehearts around applying this work, in their future relationships? And even for some people who might just be like dipping their toe into starting to date again, like, do you have any advice there?
Well, another thing that I can add when it comes to doing this work, and I don't know exactly how you teach it. I know you use protocols, for example, to plan for future events and stuff like that. But something that I tell my clients a lot is that in the beginning of the journey, and when I talk about the beginning of the journey with thought work for the brave hearts, I'm talking about like the rebirth or the second round when they start dating again and they encounter new scenarios. I usually say that we start doing the work on the past. Like it's always good to be future focused, but when we have scenarios where we notice behaviors and thinking patterns and feelings that we're like, oh, I don't really like that, I don't want to keep recreating that, we do the work and become aware by looking at past experiences. So when you start dating or when you're seeing someone and you start noticing behavior, don't immediately go to, oh, I should have caught that, I should have planned for that, I should have known, I should have seen in the moment, I should have acted better. No, like, okay, you're going to have some situations where you're going to do the work on past events. And the better you get at it, the closer to present moment you're going to get. And then eventually, when you're leveling up to expert level, and maybe a lot of you have gotten there already, you will be able to start planning forth and actually make sure that you have that control over your thoughts in those moments. But just don't use it as evidence that you're doing it wrong if you don't catch yourself before these things happen, because it is a new situation. You are a beginner again. And I think you can allow yourself to be that. And I actually used a metaphor with boxes with a client just yesterday, where both people in the relationship have their own boxes, and then there's a joined box for the relationship. And when you do something that you would label as a negative behavior, or you just act in a way you don't want to act, that would be a red dot. It's something that you label as bad. But we don't immediately take that red dot and put it into the joined relationship bucket or box, because how we react when we do that negative thing, if we open up about it, if we're vulnerable, that's a good word, vulnerable about it, and talk about it and discuss it. Or we don't even have to discuss it. We can just be compassionate with ourselves, do our thought work, and move on. It can actually be a green dot that goes into the joined relationship box. So just know that just because each individual might do things that are not great, what we put in the joined relationship box is comes from how we respond and how we treat each other after this has happened. So we have a few steps to catch things, and we don't have to just like throw our hands in the air and say, fuck it, if something has gone wrong.
Yes, I'm glad that you said that. And I also like the 3 phases almost that you lay out, because we talk about that when you're getting over your ex, because I think people get into the program in like week 1, they're like, I didn't catch myself in the moment.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, because you're going to spend a lot of time. You're going to go through an experience, and then you're going to handle it. And we're going to do thought work after the fact. And then you'll get closer and closer to the event, and then you'll start being able to plan for the future. And I'm so glad that you mentioned you start that process over again when you start dating or seeing someone new, because it's a new circumstance. It's a new experience that you haven't yet tested the thought work out in yet. So good. And then I also like the analogy of the boxes. How fun is that? I feel like I can even take that in my personal experience, where there's times in all kinds of relationships, not even romantic relationships, where I'm like, oh, I could have done that better. But then by having the conversation with someone about it, like a good friend or something, we're then able to like talk about it, and then it strengthens the relationship because that event happened and because I reacted in the way that I reacted. So
exactly. Yeah.
amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited to have you inside the group. I'm also excited for all of my brave hearts here to listen to this episode. Can you make sure to tell them how they can get in contact with you, if they want to work with you, if they want to follow you, they want all of your information? Tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, so Instagram is probably the best place to start. Katrin Berndt is my username. I'm sure you can read it written somewhere on this episode if you need the spelling.
I will put it in the show notes, you guys. It'll be there.
Perfect. So Instagram, you can always DM me. My DMs are always open if anyone wants to talk about grumpiness. It's my favorite topic. And I work with one-on-one clients. So if you want to join my program now or in the future, one day when hopefully you won't be a grumpy girlfriend, but if it, God forbid, were to happen, I am here for you. And yeah, that's it. And of course, my podcast, the Grumpy Girlfriend podcast, if you want to learn some more about what I do.
Yes, I love her podcast, you guys. I feel like we're sister podcasts. I help people with the breakup. You help them be amazing AF girlfriends. How cool is that?
And whenever people come to me and they're like, I'm a grumpy girlfriend and I would prefer not to be with my partner, I just send them to Dorothy right away. I'm like, go break up and then have a good breakup.
I love it. I love it. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. I am sending you so much love. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course, where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.